If you think the Strait of Hormuz is open means this whole crisis is winding down, that is exactly the trap. This tiny waterway handles about 21 million barrels a day, roughly 21% of global petroleum liquids consumption. So when this story moves, oil moves, shipping moves, and eventually your costs move. And buried inside this Fox segment is the real story. Iran said the strait was open. Trump kept the blockade on Iran. Reuters says access still came with Iranian conditions, and Israel's Lebanon fight is nowhere near resolved.
United States. Now that the president announced that 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon yesterday, moments ago, the foreign minister of Iran announced that the Strait of Hormuz, behind me in the distance in the Persian Gulf, is declared completely open for the remaining.
That sounds like freedom. It isn't. Reuters says ships still needed Iranian coordination and URG authorization. So no, this was not a clean reopening. It was controlled access, and that difference matters more than the headline.
In the Gulf, we're on day 5 now of the U.S. blockade that apparently has been going down without any reported incident or major confrontation. In fact, CENTCOM says at least 14 vessels have heeded the
Headline. That's your first clue. The pressure architecture did not disappear. It stayed in place.
Minutes ago, an official says the IDF remains in Lebanon to hold all the locations it has cleared and captured. The IDF writing, the goal we defined, the disarmament of Hezbollah through military or political means, was and remains the campaign's objective to which we are committed.
CENTCOM spelled it out. Block ships entering or exiting Iranian ports, while preserving navigation to and from non-Iranian ports. In plain English, the U.S. was squeezing Iran without shutting the whole artery. This is not diplomacy replacing force. This is force creating room for diplomacy. And of course that makes sense. Nobody wants to blow up a route this important if they can avoid it. Hormuz is one of the few places on Earth where regional coercion instantly becomes global economics. But the second trap in this segment is Lebanon, because once the story shifts from Hormuz to peace, a lot of viewers stop checking. The fine print.
Iran lost, and yes, the UAE won. We were subjected to more than 2,800 Iranian missiles and drones, and we shot down 96% of them. The American role after this war will be greater. This Emirati and Gulf partnership with Washington came after
Moves to peace. A lot of viewers stop checking. The fine print that is not a peace line, that is a campaign line. NBC's key detail is the one that changes the tone completely. Netanyahu agreed to a temporary ceasefire, but not to withdraw from southern Lebanon. So the Lebanon file is frozen, not solved. And this is where the coverage gets slippery. Ceasefire sounds like closure. But if one side stays in territory, one side still wants Hezbollah dismantled, and Hezbollah isn't even the actor signing the script. What you actually have is a pause sitting on top of unresolved force. That matters because the entire regional sales pitch right now is stability. And stability is politically useful even when it's thin.
Is declaring victory over Iran. An official writing here, yes, Iran lost, and yes, the UAE won. We were subjected to more than 2,800 Iranian missiles and drones, and we shot down 96% of them. The American role.
That sounds bold, but that line only makes sense if you remember what the Gulf had just been absorbing. BBC reported attacks near Fujairah and Dubai airport, plus pressure on transport and oil infrastructure. So yes, a week of calm matters, not as symbolism as relief from real disruption. CNBC added another detail that tells you how close this got to normal business life. Debris from an interception-damaged Oracle's building in Dubai. That's not abstract. That's war spilling into commercial reality. So who benefits from this calmer framing? Pretty much everybody with something to sell. Trump gets to project control. Gulf states get to project resilience. Iran gets to project reasonableness, and TV gets a cleaner story than the facts really justify. Now compare that with the most revealing visual in the entire segment.
Now, these are the vessels in the Persian Gulf, all right? So in red, since the start of the war, these are the vessels that have been basically at a standstill in the Gulf, off the coast of Basra in Iraq, off the coast of Kuwait, many off of Saudi Arabia. Look how much they're bunched up around the United Arab Emirates. I mean, just so many of these ships have been stuck here. I want to swing over here and show you the impact of the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports.
Even Fox's own digital reporting makes the point. This corridor underpins oil, fuels, and trade, and disruptions can push gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel higher fast. This is why Americans should care before a single headline says prices spike. And here's the part most people miss. Iran doesn't need permanent closure to create leverage. It just needs enough uncertainty to remind the world what it can threaten. Which brings us to the optimistic part of the segment and why it needs a reality check.
I think that statement about the Strait of Hormuz is a significant confidence-building measure. It's the first steps, potentially, for a framework whereby we dial down our military involvement and get to the stage where we can.
That sounds reasonable, and to be fair, there is some truth in it. If fewer missiles fly and more ships move, that is better than the alternative. But confidence building for television is not the same thing as power sharing in real life. NPR captures the contradiction perfectly. Trump says the strait is open and also says the naval blockade remains in full force as it pertains to Iran. So again, this is selective openness under continuing pressure. That means the better question isn't did peace break out? It's what pushed Iran to make the announcement now.
I think the blockade has been successful. I do think Iran has a high threshold for pain, especially when it comes to Iranian citizens. This regime obviously has no problem with violating their human rights and making their lives miserable. But what I think was hanging in the balance was a resumption.
That's the cleaner read. Iran moved because the cost of holding the choke point started outweighing the benefit. It was hurting itself. It was inviting more military pressure. And it was turning the world's attention to the one place where it had leverage but not endless room to maneuver. Who benefits from that shift? Short-term, global shipping gets breathing room. Gulf states get a calmer week. Trump gets a talking point. Who gets hurt if this falls apart again? Consumers, regional workers, shipping firms, airlines, and anyone pretending markets can ignore geopolitics for long.
No, and look, Iran has said for 20 years that they don't want a nuclear program. Right. But, of course, behind the scenes, clandestinely, they've pursued one. The concern we have, of course, is the disposition of the 1,000 pounds of uranium that they have, and not just nuclear enrichment, but centrifuges, for example.
But the biggest hole in the whole progress story is still ahead. That right there is why shipping headlines can mislead you. You can get a calmer strait and still have a worse strategic problem sitting underneath it. If the nuclear file is unresolved, then this is not a settlement. It is traffic management in the middle of a much larger confrontation. And once you see that, the public messaging starts looking very different. Trump posts, "I hope Hezbollah acts nicely and well." That's politically useful language because it sounds simple, moral, and forward-looking. But the enforcement problem is anything but simple, because Hezbollah doesn't disappear because a post sounds hopeful, and the state that's supposed to contain it still has to prove it can.
Yeah, so that's the key sticking point right there, Bill. I think Beirut and Tel Aviv, they would like to have an agreement. It's certainly possible that we could have diplomatic relations between Israel and Lebanon, and that would be a good thing. And it's building the capacity of the Lebanese armed forces. We've tried to do this for years.
That is the actual stress point. If the Lebanese state cannot assert force inside its own territory, then this pause stays fragile. And if Israel keeps holding territory while demanding Hezbollah's rollback, the next breakdown is not hard to imagine. So what really happened here? Iran did not surrender control. It relaxed pressure under pressure. Trump did not end coercion. He preserved it and called the result progress. Israel did not get peace. It got time and leverage in Lebanon, and the media frame, especially on fast TV, naturally drifted toward relief because relief is easier to package than contradiction. What should have happened instead? At minimum, the public should have been told more clearly that open still came with conditions, that the blockade was still operating, that Lebanon remained militarily unresolved, and that the nuclear issue was still sitting there like a loaded future crisis. And the real-life value for viewers is simple. Don't confuse reduced friction with resolved conflict. In geopolitics, systems often reopen before trust does. Shipping resumes before strategy settles. Politicians declare progress long before the incentives that caused the crisis are actually gone. So the next things to watch are not the slogans. Watch whether the blockade language changes. Watch whether ships truly move without Iranian political conditions. Watch whether Israel changes its posture in southern Lebanon, and watch the nuclear language, because that is still the biggest indicator of whether this becomes a real de-escalation, or just a better-looking pause. If you had to pick the real fault line here, what is it? Hormuz, Hezbollah, or the nuclear file? Put it in the comments. And if you want source-based breakdowns that go past the headline and into the incentive structure, that's what this channel does.